Surrounded by miles and miles of saguaro cactus, palo verde trees, prickly pear, and brittle bush, this wild stretch of the Sonoran Desert is exactly what it appears to be: majestic, tranquil, desolate. In the midst of a rolling valley within a short distance west of Tucson, Arizona, lies one of the finest filming locations in the country. For almost 60 years, Old Tucson Studios has been used in hundreds of westerns, including the Howard Hawks classic, Rio Bravo. This sprawling frontier town fills some 40 acres, complete with train station, hotel, saloon, blacksmith shop, schoolhouse, corral, and everything else a film company would need to recreate the Old West.
Old Tucson Studios, which is just west of the city of Tucson, was built in 1939 by Columbia Pictures for the movie Arizona with William Holden and Jean Arthur. And they built a really elaborate little old western town there with kind of low buildings, a couple of dirt streets. It has the beautiful Arizona landscape in the background, some peaks that poke up, lots of cacti, of course, characteristic of that part of Tucson and Arizona. And in fact, Old Tucson Studios is located just south of Saguaro National Park, which is one of the greatest concentrations of cacti in the United States. And you can see a lot of that scenery in the background of all the shots in Rio Bravo. It also has these low-sloping kind of melted adobe walls, as if there was once a Spanish adobe town that has since been built upon by these wooden Old West structures. It's got a real solid flavor of the Old Southwest.
After the filming of Arizona, Old Tucson's adobe buildings lay dormant under the desert sun. The studio was revived only briefly for the films Winchester 73, starring Jimmy Stewart, and the 1956 classic Gunfight at the OK Corral with Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. In 1958, director Howard Hawks made a decision that would change the future of the forgotten filming set. All of the exterior locations for his big-budget western Rio Bravo were going to be shot at Old Tucson Studios. When Hawks and his crew converged on the small studio, they found an authentic western setting that, with a couple of additions, would meet all their filming requirements. Under the supervision of art director Leo Cooter, the crew of Rio Bravo built 3 new structures for the town: a saloon, a bank building, and a doctor's office. With these new additions, the streets of Old Tucson magically became the town of Rio Bravo.
1958 for Rio Bravo, this location was used as a barn. And this is where they set up for the exchange with Dean Martin and Claude Akins toward the end of the film. Ricky Nelson, in that window right there, was hanging out. John Wayne was standing right here with Claude Akins preparing for the exchange. As they cross right over there, Dean Martin whips Claude Akins in a fight. Martin then goes over to those old ruins to hide out for the impending gunfight. So much of the gunplay took place in all these old adobe ruins from 1939. And that beautiful mountain right there to the east, I consider that the signature landmark of this studio. It is in the Tucson mountain range called Golden Gate Peak. And to the east, where that building now stands, initially that's where the bad guys had our good buddy Dean Martin held captive. During the gunfight, you will see the Golden Gate Peak in the background the entire time as the camera goes west to east. Duke, along with Dean Martin, hit the dynamite, blew up the warehouse, bad guys give up. John Wayne ends up with Angie Dickinson, which we all think is a heck of a deal in 1958. And of course, everybody lived happily ever after.
After the filming of Rio Bravo was completed, word got around Hollywood that Old Tucson was a viable and authentic place for making good old-fashioned westerns.
Filming at Old Tucson Studios was kind of like the world of Rio Bravo, Only Angels Have Wings, this kind of masculine-dominated, isolated world where the outside world was quite distant from you, and you kind of formed your own group and did your own professional thing away from other distractions.
When Midwest entrepreneur Robert Shelton first set eyes on the antiquated movie set, he immediately saw potential for expanding it to a fully functioning movie studio and family attraction.
I arrived here in Tucson about 1958, and I was invited to look at Old Tucson as a possibility of restoring it. Old Tucson is located in a 29,000-acre park. And it's quite isolated from most traffic. There's a wonderful institution up the road here called the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. They were drawing quite a few people, and so it just made sense that we would try and restore Old Tucson, and that's what we did, starting about 1959. I signed the lease in 59. We opened in January of 60, and got off to a good start, and things became bigger and bigger as we worked harder and harder.
Old Tucson continued to grow, building by building, with each movie filmed on its dusty streets. After Rio Bravo, John Wayne came back to shoot 3 more westerns at Old Tucson. McClintock with Maureen O'Hara, then El Dorado and Rio Lobo, which were both directed by Howard Hawks.
Well, Howard was greatly admired by his whole company. He was fair. Howard also was a tough guy. He always said one thing to me one time. He said, a good film can be made with 3 or 4 really big, good scenes and the camera at eye level. And if you want action, you cut to the horse. And somehow I always remembered Howard telling me that.
Over the years, Old Tucson has turned from a vintage Western set into a fully functioning film studio. The costume department has an extensive collection of authentic Western clothing which has been used for countless television and motion picture productions.
We do all kinds of things for the film companies based on what their needs are. If they need wardrobe created, if they need wardrobe wrangled or rented or bought, we handle all those things for the production companies when they come out here. Cowboy costumes of that era had multiple colors in them, patterns, things like that. You did have silk scarves. You had hats that were flamboyant. They had feathers in them sometimes. They wore multiple types of clothes, striped patterns on their pants. Even the boots and things like that were leather, but they weren't just flat black leather. They might have multiple colors and different layers of leather on them. They kind of took it as a personal style, I guess you could say.
When filming is not in progress at Old Tucson, the studio becomes a tourist destination where visitors can view staged gunfights, listen to live country western music, and take horse rides out in the desert. 500,000 visitors a year pass through the studio gates to visit relics of the Old West. The time-worn town of Old Tucson is filled with the vivid memories of Hollywood history. Actors such as Frank Sinatra, Paul Newman, Robert Duvall, Lee Marvin, Clint Eastwood, and Steve McQueen all walk these streets. When standing on the same ground where these legends once walked, you can almost feel their haunting presence. The Old Tucson site is more than just a movie set. It is a memorial to the men and women who helped forge a brand new nation. Through the lens of a camera, Old Tucson Studios has played and continues to play a prominent role in shaping the world's perception of the Old West.